Hey there guys, I'm back again with another series of Reddit stories. I really want to do a little bit more of the villain and D&D advice videos soon, but I've been kind of busy this week. I've had a lot going on, a lot of stuff going on with my family, so we're going to stick to what is simple, do a few RPG horror stories, maybe one or two depending on the length of them, and then next week I'll try and get out the next in the D&D advice videos and maybe a little bit of gaming content. We'll see, but let's get straight into this video. The most insightful guard and the least insightful DM. Hey Reddit, this story is about half a year old, but I really felt like I needed to purge the poison. The star of this tale is the DM. Let's call her Harley. If someone asked me to describe Harley's personality in one word, it would be insufferable. She's a know-it-all, a contrarian, holier than thou, and worst of all, a mic eater. Seriously, I couldn't understand half of what she said throughout the campaign, though that was probably for the best, since the story didn't really make much sense anyway. You might ask then, if Harley was so bad, why did you stay? Well, I was about to leave when she swore that the extra 1d4 damage I was dealing because of my starting feat was breaking the game, even though we'd almost got TPK'd every fight. Or when she almost killed a character from full damage because they failed a single dex save. Or when she cast Disintegrate on the same player at level 2, nearly killing them instantly, only to retcon when everyone complained and she was saying, well, I didn't know level 6 players would kill a level 2 character. Or when I asked for better armour, she gave the character a gimp suit instead. Side note, I think Harley had a weird fetish for gay men, because she kept asking about my dating life and assumed that I would flirt with every NPC. Okay, let's take a small time out here and say, there are massive red flags. At this point, it is someone shouting from the top of a tower through a megaphone that you should not play in this game. Bad DM, more like bad person. What is this? It's a little bit too much even for me. Honestly, I want to say something, give advice, anything, but really all I could say is don't play with this person. They seem obnoxious as a DM and obnoxious as a person just to be around, but the OP clearly has a reason, or at least something happens, so let's continue. After each incident, she would slither into my DMs, asking for a second chance or forgiveness, and whenever I pushed back, she'd turn the whole game world against me. It felt like I had to either indulge her, or endure a miserable 4 hours of play. Even when I indulged her, my character would fail one save, and then be out for 6 real-life hours, during which I'd just listen to a podcast with terrible audio. But after every incident, she would apologise and promise to be better. Well, after that prologue, let's get into the story. In her infinite wisdom, Harley decided to introduce the deck of many things into the game. She mentioned that she'd remove the worst cards, and I thought pulling a card might bring a little bit of excitement into this lethargic game, and to my luck, I drew the Void. I was in disbelief. That can't be right. Harley interpreted that as me challenging her, and she threw a fit, telling me that my character was done and to leave the session. After some discussion, she let me make a new character, which I unfortunately did. Okay, at this point, OP, what are you doing? What are you doing? You got out of the game, you understandably decided because you were just so tired of the game, what the hell, I'll pull a card from the deck of many things. And hey, I get it. I've been there. Sometimes when you're just completely bored and you don't know what to do anymore in a campaign, when your DM presents you with something that insane, you'll just go hell with it. Pull the card, pull the ripcord, and just see what happens. It's got to be exciting, right? More often than not, it's just not going to be though. If you're already bored of this person's campaign, if they've proven themselves to be uninteresting or someone who just clashes with you, pulling an exciting card from the deck of many things probably isn't going to do anything. Honestly, I could have told you from the very beginning, without knowing much about this person, this DM, it was going to be a bad card. Sure, they said they removed the worst cards, but was anyone reading this really believing that they had removed all the worst cards? I mean, really. I had to skip the next session, partially due to mental health reasons. I was pretty sure I'd have a breakdown if I played, but when I joined the following session, about 10 minutes late, I found that a shady organisation had kidnapped my friends. And I barely met these people, but I didn't want to derail, so I chose to trace them, which led us to a bar. My new character was a rogue skill monkey with the active feat and great infiltration skills. I rolled a natural 20 when talking to the guards, so they let me in. Once inside, I tried to find my friends, but The DM demanded another deception check. I used all of my abilities to boost it to the max, getting something like 31, memories of a past life, guidance, side-off knack, and a +9 to deception with advantage. And it was a fail? I asked the DM if it was a roll, because I could force a reroll, but no, apparently the guard had a passive insight of 31 plus. A very balanced game, right? This was the only thing my character was good at. He had no combat skills, a low dex to max out his charisma, and yet I couldn't beat the passive insight of a random guard. I gave up for the rest of the session. And when I asked Harley about it afterwards, she kicked me out for being a bummer. And that's not even all of it. Harley would give out magical items only to nerf them to the ground, make impossible challenges, then get pissy about us succeeding using our wits. Generally speaking, she was just a mean person, honestly. I think she enjoyed seeing me fail, and when I finally stood up to her, she called me a bad fit for her game and kicked me out. Yikes. Okay, thankfully other people in the comments are pretty much saying what I said of, OP, you should have left this ages ago, and in an edit they recognise that, saying that people are saying I should have left earlier, and I agree, that is totally on me. I was far too forgiving and a bit blind to my own plight, but we grow and learn, and yeah, definitely OP, you grow and learn. I think you'll have gotten a little bit more of your spine from this. You'll have learned to go in games where you're treated like a person, because honestly, this entire game was not a D&D game. This was a punching bag session. This DM is using each of their players as toys. They ruin their day, they ruin their characters, they honestly just kind of make a malicious and horrible world. None of what is actually going on here really feels like D&D. I mean, come on, an insight passive of 31 plus, that's just ridiculous. That is malicious, there's no way. Furthermore, you'd already rolled a natural 20. You didn't need to then roll again, that just seems excessive, and honestly, it's something I really don't like when DMs do. If you've just rolled a natural 20, that should be a big moment for you. It should be a moment where you have a couple of successes from what's happened. Having gone inside of a room after using a natural 20 to get into the room, past the guards, then being made to roll again, well, it just feels like the DM is trying to make you fail. And then, when you roll a 31, getting, again, another really good score, the DM just decides, well, I'm going to force you to fail. Because there's no way that they had a guard prepared with a 31 passive insight. I mean, they may as well be a dragon in disguise, or a mind flayer or something. What is that? That's insane for an average guard to have. Whilst I would like to offer some advice, I don't really think that there's anything to be offered here. Honestly, the OP seems to understand that this was someone who was abusing a weakness that they had. They were someone who really respected apologies, which is a great trait, OP. It's good that you just took it on the head. When people give you an apology, you give them a chance to show that they've grown. Unfortunately, sometimes you're going to meet people who just take advantage of that, and this was one of those cases. I hope that in the future you play with much better players, much better DMs, and you just have a better game. But really, this is just live and learn, move on, and hopefully find a better game. Continuing possibly in the unfortunate trend of terrible people, we have a close friend of 30 years torpedoed a game. Normally, I would bring out the name of this writer and put it on my videos, as I usually like to do. However, they have since deleted as the author, so I will not be doing that. I will simply put deleted in the by who this was for. I could look it up, I'm sure that I could roll back and use the Wayback Machine and figure it out, but I'm going to respect their privacy, and if they deleted this, clearly something came up, maybe they no longer wanted to be attached to it, so we'll respect that, but let's continue. Some of this will be vague, because the specifics would make the story identifiable to the individuals involved. I prepped a game that combined a couple of things that I dearly love. Everything that I do is homebrewed. We all take turns running it, and it's been this way since the 90s. It's a small group of 4 of us, sometimes 5, and we know each other very well. We have Frank, a close friend of mine, since the mid-90s. They have been running a game set in a fairly well-known fantasy world, a world that has different continents. It was not D&D, but think Forgotten Realms, Faerun, and Karatur. Frank has been running this campaign in Faerun, air quotes, for about 2 years, in which I play. The group was hungry for a second game, and Frank and I hatched an idea for me to make a spin-off game set in Karatur. The character game would spin off, and then maybe in the future we would cross the games over down the line, but mostly they would be separate. Frank and I talked extensively about how the split would happen, and finally the day came. We were both very excited. We used to write and run games together a lot, and the idea of returning to that collaboration felt great. I was prepped for the unholy hell out of this game. It started with a bang, and everyone enjoyed it, or so I had thought. Then, Frank's character turns disruptive, which on the surface was not a big deal. As I said, we've known each other for literal decades, and we're used to characters sometimes needing to grow a little into the game, or vice versa. But instead of growing into the game, or letting me adjust the game to meet him halfway, he just refuses. He refuses to engage, won't connect with the plot, refuses to connect with other player characters or NPCs, disrupts and denials constantly. I couldn't figure it out, and eventually the character game just lost all of its momentum, and after a dozen sessions I pitched a new idea for a different game in a totally different genre. I had to choose. I could let this game I'd prepped so carefully die, or I could demand a confrontation with an unpredictable end, and I chose to just let it die. The following week, he announces a new plotline for his favourite game that would take our player characters on an adventure to character. It took me a week of quietly seething to even speak to him. I sent him a message saying that I had put my heart and soul into my game, and I wasn't ready to go back to Katie to play. I said I'd take a few weeks off from my character from the favourite game, and could be out for the character visit. He got the message and found a way to cancel his new character plotline with something like grace. It's been a terrible month, to be honest. Reading through the comments of this, it does seem like most people are kind of asking how the talks with Frank went, or if they even happened, and the OP has responded pretty negatively, just kind of being a little bit inappropriate and harsh, and have basically just blocked everyone, and I assume that's why they've deleted their account. They've made a sign that they no longer want to be associated with this, they don't want anyone to talk to them, and they just wanted sympathy for losing their game, which, okay, I understand that to a degree. You lost your game, that hurts. It will always hurt. But people just want to know the rest of the story. But okay, I'm going to come at this with the assumption that Frank was genuinely in the wrong, and it wasn't actually the OP, as the comments seem to believe. We don't have enough information to say for either side, just that OP had a bad attitude, and Frank seemingly went to ruin the game. Still, with a 30-year friendship, you should have been able to talk. This should have been a post-session 1, hey, I see your character isn't fitting into the game, how can we help that? How can I push the narrative in a way that Frank's character, whilst disruptive, maybe finds a degree of bond with his party, maybe he finds interest in the world that he's in. What can I do? Is it simply the fact that this character just doesn't work for you now that you've played them? Do you need to play another character? What can I do as the DM to get you going in the story? Don't get me wrong, definitely as a player you have a degree of responsibility to go along with the DM at first. Something I think people often kind of take for granted is, the DM didn't go to all of my needs, they didn't expect me to run off to the right and completely ignore the story they had prepared on the left because I was interested in the right. If it's the start of the game, start of the campaign, honestly, that is a problem on you. You should give the DM a degree of leeway to kind of get themselves in a rhythm of direction. Once the game is actually going and the DM is comfortable and they kind of know what's going on, then that's fine. If the DM's played with you before and they're used to this kind of you go that way, you go this way, then sure, do that. But there is a degree of responsibility as the player to kind of help the campaign get off of its legs, help the group bond. You as a player came here to play D&D, and the DM is graciously putting the world together for you, putting the story together, putting the NPCs around and acting them for you. You should at the very least engage to a degree. Sure, that doesn't mean you can't have a character who is an unwilling participant. Maybe they don't like the situation they're in, or they don't like their party, or they're just thrown in at the last minute and, it's a band of brothers situation. Hell, I don't want to be here, but I'm gonna make the best of it. But do you know what happens in those scenarios? That character still goes along for the journey, and as a player, you have to do that. Now, as a DM, there were failings here. Clearly there was a lack of communication, or at least the DM hasn't told us that enough. The OP hasn't really given us enough room to glean what they told Frank. They clearly seem to have allowed for a couple of sessions for this disruption to go on. They talk about disruptions, denials, refusing to connect with other player characters or NPCs. Here you haven't actually talked about other players. How did the other players react to Frank? What was their opinion? If he's refusing to connect to their player characters, then surely they must have had some kind of remark as well. Maybe they had an issue. Did they talk to you about it? How did that go? As the DM here, you need to read the room. You need to see, is Frank being a greater problem? Is he being disruptive? Would it be beneficial for the group if I pulled Frank out? Now, this is going to be another one of those situations where people just don't want to talk about it because this is my long-term friend, but if they are a long-term friend, you have to have that difficult conversation. You have to trust that a 30-year friendship is strong enough to overcome one argument over a D&D game. I've had massive arguments with my friends over issues to do with roleplay or games or just generally finding them to be obnoxious in that moment, and vice versa with me. But do you know what? I'm still friends with those people, and that is the mark of actual good friendship, being able to hit each other at these problems and deal with them. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to really give too much more in the way of tips for this. There isn't enough information. It sucks that it feels somewhat malicious that Frank has then taken Karator and decided to make his own campaign venture for it, but from another scenario, we could also see that maybe they actually were interested in Karator and they're trying to pick up the pieces. Your game didn't work out, so they want to take bits of your world building that before you would collaborate and do together, and they want to still push that narrative, but you're going to be a player this time. There's nothing stopping you of being involved in their game going to Karator. You could have salvaged elements of your campaign through them. Yeah, it sucks, but there was always a way around this, I feel. Anyway, there's really just not enough information here, so I'm going to leave it there for now. We'll do a couple more of these. Maybe I'll record another here, get some more out, but thanks for watching. Unfortunate that these were fairly difficult stories. Not really the type I could comment on too much, but I feel like in RPG horror stories, sometimes that's just the way. Sometimes you can't learn much other than you just shouldn't play with people that you don't seem to connect with, that you have a clash with, that maybe you need to look back and communicate about what the issue is. And if that communication doesn't work, don't just accept it. Don't accept a half-given apology, just move on. For now though guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and if you want to support me, you can check down the link below. You can see me on Bluesky. There's links to my Twitter, which I'm using a little bit less these days given everything that's going on, but you can catch me there, Bluesky, Twitter, and if you really want to support me, hit down on my Patreon below. Every little thing really helps guys. I cannot deny how much I appreciate anything you can give. But see you in the next video. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.